Today, let's take a crash course on cymbals. I don't even have writers. I did that myself. I've essentially been a drummer my entire life. That was my first instrument. That was my main instrument. My good buddy Billy and I certainly nerd out when it comes to drums and cymbals and drum history and the technologies behind making some of these amazing cymbals that the manufacturers are building today. If you are totally lost on where to even start when it comes to picking out cymbals, maybe we can help.
So cymbals, man, thousands of years old. I mean, the basic premise here, you take two pieces of metal, slap them together and make sound. So if I could say caveman-esque concept in the sense of it didn't take much for people to figure out how a cymbal would work. You really just needed, whenever they figured out how to make metal, I guess, they figured out how to make cymbals. So before we get into like current state with brands and stuff, I think it's important to understand how we got here. Thousands of years, nothing really changed. And then about 400 years ago, Zildjian Cymbals, big name brand today, was founded. I can't remember if the anniversary was this year, last year. It's been recently, 400-year anniversary, as they really introduced cymbals out of Turkey, I believe, Constantinople, original city, and then kind of moved around. I was actually doing some research before this, moved their operation to Boston in the 1920s, and continued to kind of dominate the cymbal market in the US until a lot of the major players we'll talk about here in a minute came to be really 30, 40 years. You look back to the 60s, you had big, thick Zildjian cymbals, and from my knowledge, there wasn't a lot of competition. If you've ever been to Memphis Drum Shop or ever looked online, there are a ton of cymbal brands, and inside those brands, they all have probably a dozen different models, and inside those, series, and inside those series, they have dozens of different models. So it really is a massive part of the instrument world, the music world, the drum world, and it's highly marketed. It's very opinionated, I would say. And if you can't find something on the market, then I don't know what you're looking for, because there's just a little bit of everything for anybody. So we'll talk about
Definitely a drummer's favorite part, probably the kit to tinker with.
yeah, I would agree. I mean, you know, having a good solid drum set is important. Having fresh heads is very important, but I feel like you can kind of make a cheaper kit sound good and make older heads passable, but
just give me my good snare.
You gotta have your cymbals. You gotta have your cymbals. So let's talk our normal Wednesday night rig up here, or at least, I don't know, Mark, this might be the oldest setup we've had. We usually tinker with it a lot. This one's been pretty stable. If we start here on the right side with this crash, an Cymbal traditional 21-inch ride. Mark and I like large cymbals, kind of the trendy thing right now anyways. So that's a ride, nice thin ride though, so it works really well as a crash. You know, we might need to back up and talk about what a ride is. If we talked about the history, let's talk about the main parts of a drum kit when it comes to cymbals, if you're unfamiliar. So crash cymbals are going to be more your accent cymbals, and those typically live here on the edges. Traditionally, it was more like a 16-inch. You know, people started experimenting 17, 18 here, or I don't know, 20 years ago, and it's really blossomed into the 20, 21 inches over the past kind of 10, 15, 20 years as well. So those are your accent cymbals. And then what really drives the beat that you're going to be using most of the time are going to be your ride and your hi-hat. Your ride is going to be a cymbal that you play on top, one cymbal, and really kind of sings out, that it allows you to ride on it, hence its name. And then your hi-hats are actually a pair of cymbals sandwiched together that you can control how hard they're sandwiched together to give you a much tighter sound, or if you decide to loosen them up, more of an open sound. But it's two cymbals kind of washing together versus a single cymbal being struck. So with that being said, our two crashes are the 21-inch original ride traditional series from Cymbal. Probably my favorite cymbal I think I've ever played, Mark knows I come grab this often when needed, is the Meinl Byzant series. This is the, I can't remember, early this morning, I had to have my coffee. 20-inch jazz medium thin crash. Man, it's trashy, volume control's great on it, and it's just a nice cymbal. So that's 20 and 21, and then a 24-inch Cymbal traditional dark crash as a ride. So yes, we're using a crash as a ride and a ride as a crash. don't question it. And then you can't see it on the logo, and we'll show the Bosphorus logo in a minute, but it's faded. This is a traditional series 16-inch Bosphorus crash, and from what I can tell, it's Bosphorus I think was founded in '95, and this is late '90s. It's an older crash, or early in their years, but it's an older year-wise crash, on top of a Sabian XS. XS is kind of a midline from the Sabian brand, and I've learned that it makes a very good bottom hat. I said cymbals were opinionated. I feel like that's about the best thing a Sabian's good for, but that's just me. So I know there's a lot of other people who would very strongly disagree with me. So that's our typical setup that we use at DeSoto Hills on a Wednesday night.
And to be clear, lots of drummers tend to take non-conventional cymbals and use them in different, or use cymbals in non-conventional ways. In
Correct.
this case, we're using crashes for rides and
crashes. These are both crashes for hi-hats too.
Yes.
Yep. So
and that's not uncommon.
It's not uncommon.
In today's world.
It is not uncommon in today's world. Certain people have chosen to use 20-inch rides or crashes for hats as well. We'll not mention any names.
Right. He's probably watching this video right
Maybe he will. Okay, so outside of that, that's kind of, I think, the reason why we've chosen these. Istanbul and then that Byzance, I said it was a thin. One of the main reasons is we're not in a massive room here at DeSoto Hills. So noise control, especially with someone like myself that has to work hard at playing reserved, is very important. Mark and I just pulled off, just to show you the cymbals better, but we use these baffles to help kind of shield the mics and the crowd from some of the harshness of the cymbals. That helps. Those are just clear plexi that, think of traditional drum shield that a lot of you guys are used to seeing probably, on stages in the 80s and 90s and early thousands. This is a more aesthetically pleasing version of that. Doesn't take up as much room and are a lot lighter. That comes from someone who's lugged those around churches often. So that is one reason we have chosen these cymbals. They're a darker sound, which again is kind of trendy in today's, especially in worship music, but kind of a trendiness of today is that darker sound that is kind of more original, I would believe, to say. Like Istanbul is kind of going back. Are they made in Turkey? I can't remember if they are, or yeah, made in Turkey. Istanbul is going back to kind of the roots of original cymbal making in Turkey, where Zildjian was founded, and they've moved most of their operation, if not all of it, to the USA. Just given that dark, thinner, slightly trashier, washier vibe, which works very well for worship music, but is great for sound control as well. I don't know what's in Mark's bag. We got my bag here too, and some of the other stuff that the church has. Another type of cymbal. This is a ride, like we talked about earlier, but this is an unlathed cymbal. So this is more what cymbals used to coming out of a foundry. So if you're familiar with like a lathe machine, it allows somebody to, whether it's wood or metal, to shave very precise amounts off of something. So when you're thinking about a cymbal, which is, goodness, like 1/16 thick, or not even 1/16, you have to be precise with it. So those shinier cymbals you saw earlier are lathed, which allows them to control the sound a little bit better. This is an unlathed cymbal, so this is just about how it comes out of the foundry and then is hammered and cut down to size. That is a 24-inch Bosphorus black pearl. Again, darker sound, completely different sound, earthy vibe, if that's kind of the word we can use, unlathed cymbal. Then you can get into other versions. Like I said, a lot of brands have a lot of different series. So I'm a big fan of Zildjian. Can't often play them up here just because it is a thicker cymbal than the ones that we showed over there. Most of their, if not all their series are. They have a lot of different series, and the K series is known as one of their darker series. So let's see here. I've got a couple different, actually. Well, I don't have just a traditional K in here. It's either in the closet or at home. But they have the K Karope, which was named after one of the sons of the original founder of Zildjian. Then you have my favorite series, the K Constantinople, which was named after the city in which Zildjian was founded in. And this is a heavily hammered cymbal, as you'll see. That's part of how cymbals get their sound, is hammering. The basic concept is you forge a piece of metal, you lathe it down to size or really weight desire, and then you hammer it to get that sound. And hand hammered is the new big buzzword in cymbal. Is instead of machine hammering, we're going back to the traditional roots of cymbal making. Whereas, I mean, I can't even begin to guess how many little dimples are hammered into this, but in theory someone did that, I believe, on this series. But if it was hand hammered by hand, that's someone striking this with a mallet every time to give it every one of these dents. And that really affects the dark, kind of trashy sound. I say trashy, these are very nice cymbals. They're not like a china that would be very much sounds almost like a trash can lid, but they are darker compared to some of the A series, which is more of a rock series of Zildjian cymbals. And then we'll just play a fun game here of what's about to come out of Mark's cymbal bag.
You'll notice some of these bags look pretty expensive. They are, because when you invest this much money in cymbals, you definitely want to have really good bags.
Yeah, Mark, we can tell on ourselves if we want to talk about how much these things cost, but they're not cheap. They're probably the most money we've invested into our drum stuff.
Yes, for sure.
There is the traditional K series, one of the most iconic and I think the coolest logos in cymbal making, or in the cymbal market. The Zildjian K.
Love them.
Love them. So the beginning of the darker line of Zildjian cymbals, the K moving up through the Caropes and the Constantinoples. And the K Custom, which is in the middle of there somewhere, which, nope, that's another K coming out here.
Oh, yes.
This is a 19-inch dark crash.
I typically play a 17 on the left and a 19 on the right if I'm going on the road somewhere.
Man, that logo is just killer. And here we go.
Which I got two.
Here we go. So now we're, as the bag tries to fall over, getting into more the brighter series of Zildjian. This is the A. Armand ride, I believe, again, named after another son in the long line of, I don't know how many generations are in 400 years, but there's been a lot of sons. Mark, there's a video that I was watching actually on the way here that you might want to tag in this that talks about the history of Zildjian. It's fascinating. So I think we can tag that at the end or something. Named after one of the sons of the Zildjian owners. And this is a brighter, it's a much larger bell. If you notice, this is the centerpiece here that's raised. More traditionally used in kind of a rock atmosphere, hence the bell. If you know anything about rock music, that's a lot more prevalent than what we do here with worship music. And yeah, this is what I would consider to be a very traditional ride. This is probably more similar to what you were seeing coming out of the original US factories that started, I believe, in the 20s or 30s when Zildjian made the move to America. So hence there is that beautiful stamp, Zildjian Co. Genuine Turkish cymbals made in USA. That's slightly ironic, but that's what they call it. So America was their biggest market in the early 1900s, and they made the move over here. And that video explains that in a much better terms. Yeah, so cymbals, we'll play a few here. We obviously have what we talked about earlier, the series here. If you're curious about anything else, this just sparks some kind of imagination. My cymbal, which is Memphis Drum Shop, you heard me mention earlier. I think we're very much spoiled here in Memphis, having the Memphis Drum Shop that has 2 rooms full of just any cymbal. I mean, you could find, if you can't find it there, I don't know if it exists. Yeah, they don't make it. They also do something incredibly cool to try to bridge the gap with e-commerce and buying things online a lot, especially the higher end cymbals. They will play it, serial number it, and make sure you can buy that exact cymbal. So we'll play some of what we have here, and if you're just curious about what other types of cymbals and other brands that we don't have here sound like, that is a great place to go check it out. We'll just move right to left, I guess. Or no, we'll let the 2 crashes, actually. We'll start with the crashes, and you can hear the difference between those 2, and then we'll move to the right and hat, just like we did earlier when we were talking about it. So this is the traditional 21-inch original ride that we use as a right side crash. nice and warm. A pretty pronounced bell. I think that's the first time I ever hit the bell. Very nice cymbal. It'll be pretty stark contrast, I believe, moving over here to this 20-inch medium thin jazz crash from Meinl Byzance series. Yeah, I mean, it's the best of both worlds. I mean, we have no use for a China cymbal in worship music, which is a very just rock-driven, very trashy cymbal. That's the best way to describe it. But this just really breaks through from, I know they're dark, but a vibrant cymbal and kind of gives a trashy vibe, and love it. It's a great cymbal. I can really lean into it and not worry about killing folks with volume. And then we'll move to the ride here. So we'll play the top of it like you would traditionally when you're riding on it. This bell is almost non-existent, so we'll play that. But then just because you're traditionally riding on the top, you can also crash these, which this one's a dark crash, so it's made for that, or ride on the edge where you're crashing over and over and over. That thing's large enough you can see, Mark, I don't know if you can get a good view, you can see that thing flexing. It's thin and large, or 24-inch, very thin cymbal, and it just it moves like a sheet of paper, which is crazy because it's metal. That's the Cymbal traditional 24-inch dark crash that we use as a ride. And then over here, so this is the weird blend of a older Bosphorus traditional series crash. So as you can see, compared to that Black Pearl, this is the Lathed, more traditional kind of hat on top of a Sabian XS 16-inch crash. So you can play it closed on top, which is a very tight controlled sound. You can play it closed a little bit from the side, which is still a tight sound, but a little bit more chick is the best way to describe it, if we can use a drum word. And then using the pedal, you can either play it, adjust how much gap you want to leave to let them wash together. Or if you're in the middle of a tight beat and you're just wanting to interrupt it a little bit, oftentimes you can strike it, open it, and close it to give this kind of sound. Or just using the pedal, achieve a similar sound if your other two hands are, or if your two hands, not other, if your two hands are busy, you can let your left foot drive the hi-hat. So, well, if you've noticed now, we have, goodness, 24, 24, so that's 48 plus 21, 65? No, 69 inches? I don't know. I'm not great at math. I'm a drummer, not a mathematician, but a lot of cymbal here now, and that's because we are just going to quickly show you guys the differences between that unlathed 24-inch ride, what we use as a ride, but a 24-inch dark crash, more traditionally lathed, and then moving into that brighter, I won't say bright, because there are series that are much brighter than this, but more that traditional sound that was just kind of the classic Zildjian sound that drove through most of the last century. So, Bosphorus 24-inch Black Pearl. It's warm. That lathing, the unlathed top, in my opinion, sounds almost reserved a little bit. It sounds great as a crash, but it definitely feels like it's being held back. It's a much thicker cymbal than this 24-inch over here. I think the gram weights are on the bottom of both, so we could talk about that in a minute, which just 24 inches. The gram weight's going to just talk about how thick that cymbal is. So for comparison, back to the 24-inch traditional dark crash from Istanbul. I guess listening to them side by side, what I get by reserved is this, and it is a crash, so maybe so, actually does feel like it peaks. It peaks, where this kind of seemed like it was just, the volume would go up and down, but it didn't seem to change in tone, whereas that one definitely has a certain point to which you strike it and it just kind of breaks out of its normal tone. And then the Armand 21-inch ride from Zildjian. If you're not familiar with cymbals, you might say from a crowd's point of view, they all sound exactly the same, but that couldn't have been a better comparison there. These two, yeah, there might be kind of a nuanced difference, but that right there is pretty bright, yeah, compared to the other two. And again, it gets brighter than that with the A Custom series, I believe, probably is much brighter than that on a lot of their rides, the Ping ride particularly. So yeah, that's just kind of a difference of what, I mean, ultimately, if you're looking at it, it's just the hammering and the thickness of these rides. It's kind of crazy because all it is, well, and then it's the recipe of metal they used in these. So that kind of what changes the difference, because they might appear to be the same, but it really comes down to weight, which just is, thickness when you're talking about comparing two of the same sizes of cymbals, and then how that bell is created, whether it's a very pronounced bell versus a softer bell, and then the alloy used, so it's a blend of different metals.
If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do so. Hit that like button. Can't wait to see you on the next one.